and welcome to the Think MHK Podcast presented by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. On this podcast, you will hear from a variety of people from across the region, including community leaders and business owners. You will hear their Manhattan stories and hopefully get to know your friends and business associates a little better. Thanks for tuning in today. So today's a bit different on the Think MHK podcast. We have two guests and we're going to talk about young professionals. And so along those lines, we have our newest chair of the Hype Steering Committee. And of course, Hype is helping young professionals emerge. And that was the rebrand of our Young Professionals program a few years ago. And our newest chair is Kale Terrill. Hey, Kale, how are you?
Hi there. How are you, Jason?
And then our other guest today is one of our newest staff members at the Chamber, Allison Muth, who is our Talent Strategies Manager. Hey, Allison.
Hey.
So, Kale, I'm going to start with you. And of course, you just took over this year as the chair of Hype. And that's a pretty prestigious position at the Chamber. And we lift up our Young Professionals program. But before we get into the nitty gritty of Hype, we always ask people to tell us a little about themselves, how they ended up in Manhattan. I know you're with the Trust Company, so talk about how you ended up with the Trust Company and what do you do there?
Yeah, I originally grew up in Smith Center, Kansas, north central part of the state, and my wife and I moved to Manhattan. I spent some time in Lincoln, Nebraska from 2015 through the end of 2020 and moved to Manhattan in January of 2021. So been for Manhattan close to 3 years now, and it's been a blur and a great time. Joined the Trust Company shortly after moving to Manhattan and been there for a little over 2.5 years.
And what do you do at the Trust Company?
I am a trust officer and wealth advisor.
Okay. And of course, the Trust Company is a very important partner of the Chamber, and we appreciate you all and your investment. You're a Chairman Circle member, and Mark Knockendorf just finished his term as the chair. So obviously we feel really good about the Trust Company at the Chamber. Tell us a little bit about Hype. What is Hype exactly?
Yeah, so Hype is a program of the Chamber of Commerce, like you mentioned, and our goal is to attract and engage, grow our young professional talent pool here in Manhattan and create a better diversified workforce of young professionals who can grow here as individuals and professionals. So we're driven by our member organization and obviously carry through the core principles and pillars of the Chamber in doing so.
And we now have almost 300 members, right?
We did. We surpassed the 300 member mark in late 2023, which was an awesome milestone. The program, we went through a little bit of a rebrand coming out of COVID. And so we found our footing in some recurring programming and some other initiatives. And 2023, we launched an official membership for the Hype program, and crossing the 300 member mark is a huge milestone for us.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And, I might talk a little bit about the rebrand because this predates both of you, but it's an interesting story. So I started here in 2019, and one of the things that my leadership asked me when I came here is they knew I had experience helping start young professional programs in some of my previous communities. One was Lincoln, Nebraska, which you mentioned, and they're up to, or at least at one point they were up over 1,000 members. And then in Abilene, Texas, we started one, and they're over 500 members. And so we went through a planning process in 2019, and Blade Magus really led that for us. But there was a group of about, 10 or 12 people, and we had a wonderful, like I had more people comment about how spectacular our rollout was at the annual meeting in 2020, which of course was in February, and then a month later everything shut down and you couldn't do anything. And so it was an unfortunate beginning, but we've really recovered, and it's because of people like you and Amber, who was our staff person for a while, and now Allison and Dina Huff. Is just to be at 300 members is pretty incredible at this point.
Yeah, it's been really awesome. And it all goes to the credit of Jason, the Chamber staff. And you mentioned Allison and Dina and their work, and now Allison's role from the Chamber leadership, but also Tara Grubb as the committee chair coming out of that rebrand. And most recently, Stephanie Pierce, who have given so much of their time and bringing some structure and recurring events and stability to the program. I feel like we have a pretty awesome footing now to build on for the future. And that goes to the credit of the whole program.
Absolutely. So what are the primary activities of Hype?
Yeah, so we try to carry out our mission of engaging and attracting and growing our young professionals in Manhattan through the mission of 5 pillars. And those pillars are engage, develop, play, connect, and a love MHK pillar, which is a part of our philanthropic mission, giving back to our community. But our engage pillar primarily works with employers in town or hiring entities in town, working with our new to town young professionals, or perhaps with Fort Riley as close as it is, some of our trailing spouses or our transitioning military folks in the region. Our connect and develop pillars overlap in some ways, but we've created some recurring events month over month. And one of those events is our Lattes with Leadership event, where we host a speaker on the third Tuesday at 8 a.m. And it can be an influential leader in our community, an established business leader. We've hosted a number of mentorship panels to give our young professionals the ability to connect with leaders in town and also find some developmental resources. Our play committee is focused on our social aspect. And so one Thursday a month, we have an after hours event where we can unplug from work and create an environment where we can connect with others. So we try to establish our events at different times throughout the day and different times throughout the month to engage with our membership, but all focused on bringing people together and building on the future of Manhattan.
You've been on the steering committee for a couple of years. Why did you decide to come on to the committee, and what has your experience been?
My personal experience had a lot to do with me joining Hype. And as someone who was new to Manhattan in 2021, I think it's so important for our young professionals to find a sense of belonging, a place to interact with others and get involved in our community. And so that was my experience. I knew that we were launching and establishing somewhat of that rebrand of the Young Professionals Group and got involved. Very fortunate that I work for the trust company, and our involvement as a founding investor has given us a position on the steering committee to be influential and building toward the future. So that was my direct experience for the last 2 years, was being involved with the steering committee. And that stemmed from just wanting to be a part of something bigger than myself. And I think our membership and certainly our steering committee and pillar chairs have that in mind with everything we do.
You were approached to be chair. What went into your decision to decide to do that?
Yeah, it was a fairly easy decision, and not because of wanting to lead the committee or anything for myself, but it was more about who we have in place across our committee. I mentioned Tara's work as a past chair, and most recently Stephanie Pierce's work as our past chair. Amber, who was part of the chamber's leadership, and now Allison's leadership, and our pillar chair folks who are doing all of the details planning of our events and working toward our programming for membership. I feel like we've got a very established group who can put some things together for us to build on. We've got a really good structure, and it's more about being able to work with some influential leaders more than anything.
Is there any particular moment that you've sort of enjoyed or a particular program that you've enjoyed in your time as just being a member of Hype?
Yeah. So leading up to October of 2023, we hosted our first annual summit, which was somewhat of a mirror of the Flint Hills Leadership Conference that the chamber puts on every year. And so wanting to bridge that gap and bring programming and initiatives and issues that are important to our community and the growth of Manhattan, being able to be a part of planning that event in a small capacity, all the credit goes to Bailey Hinkle and her pillar for putting those pieces together, and Amber, and also Allison's leadership, Dina's leadership. But that was a key moment for our group and giving our membership some annual summit experiences that hopefully we can build on moving forward.
Yeah. Of course, Bailey Hinkle's with WTC, and they're a big member in that program as well. Why is having a vibrant young professional program important to our community?
Yeah, I think when you look at where we're at as a community and as a region, Manhattan is growing, right? We're building on some momentum that's been brought about certainly by the work of our chamber, advocating and building with our entrepreneurs and our businesses and our community. And, our economic development is vital to our success in our community. I think that all stems and is able to be carried forward by our talent. And that starts with our young professionals coming from K-State or even in the region, and one, keeping our talent in Manhattan, but also attracting new talent and building toward the future with them.
So let's talk to Allison here for a minute. Allison, welcome to the Think MHK Podcast. So your title is Talent Strategies Manager, and this was a position that we created in 2020 as part of the Region Reimagined strategy launch. And it was for the first time our economic development organization began focusing on not just trying to attract jobs and expand local companies, but also how do we attract and retain talent to the community. And we have really good pipelines. So having a little more intentionality in that process. So before we talk about those programs and then your connection back into Hype and helping coordinate that program, talk about how your history and where you grew up and how you end up in Manhattan in this position.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I was originally born and raised in Great Bend, Kansas, and I moved to Hays to go to school, and I got both my undergraduate and graduate degree in organizational leadership from Fort Hays State University. And why I bring that up is because I actually met Amber when I was a senior at Fort Hays at a career fair, and she said, "What do you think about coming to Manhattan?" And at that time, it really wasn't an option. But it was right when the Made for Manhattan materials had been launched. And, once I took a look at those, I was honestly captivated by, the small town feel with a lot of stuff that's going on in the community. It was close to my home. It was centrally located to all my friends, and there was job opportunities available. And so originally I took a job with Civic Plus. I did inside sales there. And through that process, I learned a lot about prospecting and relationship building and customer service, which a lot of that has transitioned over to my role here in the chamber. And I wanted to use those degrees in that capacity. And so I transitioned to the chamber in September, and I'm happy to take on this role. And it's always something that I've wanted to do. And I feel like I am serving a stronger purpose working with HR professionals in the community.
Yeah. And of course, Made for Manhattan is the brand that we developed a couple years ago as our talent attraction brand. And all of the resources with that brand are found at madeformanhattan.com. And so people can look at those, but it's a great program, or it's a great branding strategy, and I'm happy how that turned out, and we continue to add to it every year. So as you mentioned, you started the chamber in 23. So talk about your primary duties. What is it as the talent strategies manager? What is it exactly that you do?
Yeah, so there's really three primary components to my job. One is being the Hype staff liaison. So that consists of, building agenda packets, working alongside Kale and Stephanie to make sure that they have the resources that they need, building up sponsorships for the next year, and working with chamber leadership to kind of be that in-between as far as communication goes between the two groups. And then I also help out with those events. And so I attend all the Lattes of Leaderships and Hooray Thursdays and make sure that we can be innovative and do better, as we move forward. And the second component is I work with the Workforce Development Committee, which is kind of a sounding board for workforce advocacy. And we build programs and talk through issues and combat barriers that prevent those from living and working here in Manhattan. And it's built up of a group of HR professionals here in the community that want to come and bring a voice and talk through things like workforce housing or skilled up programs or from military relationships to area employers and childcare. And for instance, one of the initiatives that has come out of that this year is the dual career program. We've heard through that group that employers are losing candidates because their spouse can't find work. And so we've actually built a program alongside Kansas State University and Dr. Cheryl Grice, who's been super instrumental in that initiative, to build a platform where somebody that has gotten a job can put their spouse's information in there and really we can send that out to local HR professionals who are willing to give that consideration. So that is something that has come out of that and has been progressive through that time. And then the last thing is, just workforce development. So we have a classroom to career program, which includes fourth grade classrooms being paired with businesses in the community to build projects and see the inside of their organization, building internship programs. We have a summer internship program that includes different programming for summer interns that are at different Manhattan local organizations, and doing some community tours, tabling events, and career fairs. So really, it's just the awareness of the Made for Manhattan campaign and what that means and why Manhattan's important, and then conveying that to others.
Yeah, and so you attend quite a few trade shows and both universities and colleges around the region, as well as military events. And how has Manhattan received at those kinds of events?
I think that, we're off the interstate, and it's not something that people often think about. And especially if they're from a larger community, they think, there's not a lot there. I'm not sure I want to go there. And they're actually quite surprised when they see everything that we have to offer here. And especially from Kansas State students who attend the college. And once they get out and about in the community and see the things that are available to them for recreation or for music activities, things that are entertainment, they are ecstatic about what they can provide. And I think Hype does a good job in promoting those things, of showing them a different side of what Manhattan has to offer. So I think they're just initially surprised at what we can offer them.
And when we developed the Made for Manhattan program, one of the things we wanted to do was make sure that we were a valued resource for our HR professionals. And so you try to maintain a close relationship with the larger employer HR people in town as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why is talent such an important part of a community economic development program?
Yeah, well, Manhattan is continuously growing, and businesses can't grow without a capable workforce. And, as we expand, we not only need to recruit people, but we also need to retain people here in Manhattan. And, kudos to the Chamber for actually recognizing that and building this position, just knowing that a lot of the organizations here have one HR individual, and that we need to supplement that and help them out in their initiatives. And then, hence just going back to the root of the problem. And so there are a lot of things that we've built to, build those pipelines. That starts with awareness, and the Classroom to Career program starts in the 4th grade, so we're looking at career fairs and bus tours and facility tours, just allowing the business to open their doors to those that are in the community. And then, once they're in the high school age, we try to go to more of a job shadowing and interviewing and making sure those resources are available. And then, once they're in college, we want them to stay here. And so it's preparation of internships and part-time work and apprenticeships, and making sure that those resources are available here in Manhattan, because we want them to know that there are job opportunities, not just the first job, but multiple jobs and promotions and things that it can be a prosperous community if they're willing to work hard and stay here.
Yeah, you brought up something right there at the end that I think the average person might not think about, because I wouldn't have thought about it until I've had people tell me this, is you can have the ideal job for a candidate, say from Dallas. And as you're an HR person, you're trying to recruit that person, you have the ideal job. They really want that job, but there's usually 2 things that sort of factor into that. Number one, I have a spouse. Where does my spouse work? Because if my spouse doesn't have a job, then it's not an ideal setting. And number 2, is that the only kind of job like that in the community? Because if it is, and this doesn't work, now I'm stuck trying to find a job and have to move my family again. So all those things are super important, and it's things people don't think about. And so I appreciate the fact that you and some of our committees are spending time working on those initiatives, because they're super important. But how does Hype factor into the Chamber's talent attraction strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to show people that Manhattan's a prosperous city, and that there's a lot of opportunities for young people. And we want young people because they're innovative and they bring new ideas and strategies to the table. And companies are trying to compete in a really competitive market here. And so for Manhattan to grow and have intelligent people in their organizations, we have to build that, from the ground up. So I think Hype's a great opportunity to do that. Not only are we providing a social content for those Hype members, but we're also providing the development for them as well. So they're getting like Kale alluded to, the summit, they're getting exposure to things that are going to help them move forward in their career. And, it can be really uncomfortable as a young professional when you're in a room full of experienced professionals. And so just making them feel comfortable that they can go talk to higher leadership. And that's something that we've really tried to bring forth with the mentorship program that we've developed between Hype and the established business leaders. But just being able to connect with high priority business leaders and letting them know that their voice matters. And then, lastly, bringing the next generation of chamber leadership. We have a really great leadership right now, but we want those members to be able to be comfortable serving on higher positions like Kale is now, because he's served here for the last several years on a committee. So I think those are some really important things.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I didn't ask Kale about this, but one of the elements of being the chair of Hype is you are now on the board of directors. And so I know you're early in that experience, but is that Is that something you're excited about?
I'm very excited about it, and certainly was a part of attraction to being able to work with the Hype committee, but also to be able to bridge that gap from the chamber board of directors and to take, issues that our established business leaders are working through, or initiatives that we're working toward, and ideas that matter to that next generation of leadership in Manhattan, and how do we bridge that gap to our young professionals. And so I'm very excited to be able to work with our leaders in Manhattan. You look at the broad array of talent that serves on that board of directors and the work that they do, not only with their organizations, but in our community and benefiting others. I think our Hype membership, right, is a very diverse group of people demographically. Primarily, we work with young professionals aged 21 to 40. And so that's a pretty broad range of individuals who are growing and advancing in their career, and just creating those opportunities for them to understand what Manhattan is working toward and growing toward in the future, and how they can be a part of that. I think that only builds our opportunity for success.
Yeah. So this wasn't a question that I prepared you for, but just something as I was sitting there thinking about it. So you're basically the fourth chair since rebrand, and it's been interesting that each person's had their unique personality and has brought something new to the organization. So you had Blade, who was very visionary and sort of cast this big brand about who we are and what we're about. Then you had Tara, who was she's a party planner, right? She makes things attractive and makes things people want to be at events that she puts on, and she's very, people want to be around her, and she's very, magnetic personality. Then you had Stephanie, who kind of dropped the hammer and said, okay, we can't all be fun. We have to be a little more structured and planned and make sure things go. We're paying our bills and we're raising. So what kind of person do you think you're going to be as the leader of the organization? Yeah,
I think it's really interesting that you bring that up, because we have had some different personalities, and each have brought incredible strengths to our committee and to the program. But like you said, Stephanie brought a great deal of structure to our event programming and to what our membership can expect month over month. And part of my personality and my trade as a trust officer or wealth advisor, right, I'm pretty in tune with being fiscally responsible, with bringing some sustainability to our programming. And I think we've got a really good opportunity to build on our recurring programs that are in place, but making sure that we're maximizing the opportunity for our membership in all of our pillars, whether that's part of our philanthropy with our Love MHK pillar. How do we incorporate them more into our event programs, or better align our membership with that mission? And the summit was certainly a good start, but I think bringing some, again, sustainability to building on that year over year. And I think the chamber plays a huge role in that, in bridging that gap.
So last question that I'd like both of you to answer, and we can start with Kale, but what are ways that Manhattan can attract and retain more young professionals?
I think we're doing those things today, right? I think you mentioned that, when folks have an opportunity, whether it's for a job or just a new location here in Manhattan, they need a community that supports their whole family. If they have a family, they need a community that provides them more opportunities than just a position or a work opportunity. And so I think our young professionals are finding, to Allison and your point, there's more to Manhattan than meets the eye. And we're a small town community that provides a pretty awesome family life, but we have all the amenities, and we're continuing to focus on enhancing those amenities. So I think continuing open conversations and continuing to attract young talent and find ways to keep them in Manhattan is crucial to our future.
Allison, how about you?
Yeah, I think one of the main ways is having businesses open their doors to interns and letting those interns come to our summer internship program, and just letting them experience what Manhattan's like, letting them experience what Hype is like, and letting them see that there are young professionals that are thriving here. There's no better way to do things than seeing it for yourself. So I think that's a really great way to get involved and just to come to try an event, encourage young professionals from your organization to come try an event and see if it's something that they would be interested in, because it's more than what they're going to expect, and just like Manhattan is. And so that's what I encourage others within the community to do.
I always say in this, I don't know if people take it the way I mean it, because I mean it in the most wonderful way, that Manhattan benefits from low expectations, because it is invariably, if we have a client or a prospect or anyone who's visiting for the first time, the first thing they'll say is, wow, this is not what I expected. And they mean that in one of the most positive ways possible, because their image of what Manhattan is, and I actually was the same way the first time I visited. My image of what I thought the community was completely different. And, I thought it was a small town on the plains, middle of Kansas. And it is in Kansas, and there's great things about Kansas, but it's a vibrant city in a beautiful part of the country. And we have anything you need, we have here. And if not, you can get there fairly quickly. And so I've never done a tour for a potential employee or potential new business or anyone where their impression of the community wasn't greater than what they expected when they came in. And I think there's benefits to that, right? We over-deliver. There's things about over-delivering that I think are important. All right, so we're gonna move into the rapid fire section, and so we'll have two different ones, right? So Kale, we'll go first with you, but this is the most popular thing about our podcast when people talk to us. So, what movie have you seen the most?
For Love of the Game, Kevin Costner, pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. Fell in love with that movie when I was a young kid, and I've seen it hundreds of times.
Costner's done a lot of baseball. So if you could go back in time for a day, what day would you go to?
Yeah, recently my wife and I got married in April of this year, and would love to go back to that day and have everybody in one place, and pretty awesome to celebrate with friends and family.
When your wife listens to this, you will be in good
easy answer.
Yeah, there you go. What job did you want as a kid?
I wanted to be a firefighter. That's the first thing I can remember growing up, driving big fire trucks.
That's a fairly typical kid aspirational job. Well, what was your actual first job?
Technical first job. I was 12. I started a mowing business in Tiny Smith Center, Kansas, and worked there until I was 15.
Okay. So who inspires you the most and why?
It'd be my parents for sure. The way they raised us, my brother and I, and give back to our community back in Smith Center still. And so definitely my folks.
Okay. What skill would you most like to learn?
When I was young, I started to learn the piano. Never have become a piano player, but I would love to learn to play the piano.
Me too. What is the one thing that instantly makes your day better?
Cup of coffee in the morning.
We've had multiple people answer that, so I think that's a good answer. Do you prefer working remotely or in the office?
I'm definitely in the office.
Yeah, me too. How do you deal with work stress?
I love to play golf or go to the gym.
Okay. And last question, what advice would you give the 19-year-old Kale?
I would tell him that it will all work itself out. The sun will rise tomorrow.
That is great advice. All right, Allison, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Do you have any hidden talents?
I do. I sing. And so I've been able to go several different places due to that talent. And so it's been really exciting.
We'll have to have you do it at the office. What do you want people to remember about you?
I want them to remember that I'm kind.
Okay, that's a good answer. What job did you want as a kid?
I wanted to be a pharmacist.
Pharmacist. All right. Interesting. What was your actual first job?
I was a children's librarian.
Who inspires you the most and why?
I would definitely say my parents. They instilled respect and working hard, and they always have solid advice.
Okay. What skill would you most like to learn?
I would love to learn sign language.
Oh, interesting. We've not had anybody answer that question or answer that way. Where is the coolest place you've traveled?
London, England.
What is one thing that instantly makes your day better?
My pet, Miles, my cat.
And do you prefer working remotely or in the office?
I'm definitely in the office.
Yep. And we appreciate that. And then last, what advice would you give the 19-year-old you?
I would tell myself that it's never wrong to ask a question, and it might feel stupid in the moment, but it won't. It'll go away, and you'll realize that asking that made things better.
Yeah. How do you find out things if you don't ask questions?
Absolutely.
So I agree with that. Well, Kale and Allison, thanks for being part of our show, and thanks for all the work you're doing for the community. And we'll look forward to seeing the results of, Kale, your time as chair of Hype, and Allison, as you get the talent program moving in a new direction. And so maybe we'll get back together here in a year or so and talk about where we are.
Awesome. Thank you,
Jason. Sounds great. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Think MHK, a podcast produced by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. If you enjoyed the Think MHK podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and share it out on your social media channels. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce.